Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek through the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on Volume 17, Chapter 11. Sorry for the cliffhanger last week. We all know it's not that big of a cliffhanger in the end, but yeah, it was just running a little bit long. But here we are today. We are going to jump right back into it. I was super excited about talking about Chapter 12, but then I read the whole thing and it's got some really juicy bits in there, but at the same time, it wasn't as much as I thought it was going to be. Like when I talked about it last Mushoku Monday, I was like, I got that little snippet of, ooh, an Orsted talk. And it wasn't as massive of reveals, but they are technically things that sort of flip the script. So I'm excited to talk about that. I was kind of not really excited about 11, and that's mainly because I have my issues with how it kind of plays out. It's got a lot of juicy bits in there, but I think it sort of concludes kind of cheesy. It's not my favorite of Refugion's writings. I'm known for every now and then, whenever something doesn't quite feel right, I'll point it out, but it's not like it ruins the series. It never does ruin the series. It's just these little moments where I'm like, that was a little cheesy, but hey, that's what Fujian decided to do. But we'll get into it when we get into it. But yeah, as per usual, thank you guys so much for dropping by for the premiere. Hey chat, hope you guys are doing well as always, and I hope you have a great rest of your Monday after Mushoku Monday. Don't leave yet. Additionally, everybody that drops by for the video later on, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. And additionally, yes, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, all that stuff. It's just, it's massively appreciated. Last week we had Noah, which dropped some crazy supers and gifted members. Gearless is just dropping crazy supers over this entire week because I've been doing some live streams. Thank you so much, Gearless. It means a great deal to me. Thank you so much. I think Gearless is literally like supporting the channel himself. So thank you so much, dude. That's just awesome. Thank you so much. Additionally, Nicholas dropping some crazy supers. Nickmer becoming a member again. Abraham doing some gifted subs as well. Kusha with a great super. David with the gifted membership as well. Hope you're doing well, David. And as well, Gabriel dropping some supers as well. Thank you guys so much. It means so much to me. But with all that said, with all the mushy stuff out of the way, let's just dive right into Chapter 11, The Madness of Luke. Or the recounting things that we've already established that Luke apparently has forgotten. Shortly before Ruiz had returned to the hall, things had finally somewhat calmed down. Most of the remaining in the party hall were powerful and influential high nobles, members of venerable houses that had served the kingdom for many generations. Grey Rat, Blue Wolf, Purple Horse, White Spider, Silver Toad, and the like. Their need to see the conclusion of today's events kept them there, even as others fled following Orshad's disappearance. That's kind of an interesting thing, like, it's one of those things like, yes, they have to be there to see the conclusion, but at the same time, fear of death, like, doesn't drive them to go away. Like, I'm sure somebody would understand the idea that, yeah, want to kind of get out of there. We'll come back later and figure out what happened. Noah had forgotten what had taken place before the party's violent end. Pedagogus had walked into these halls. These two events had left a strong impressions on the nobles that Ariel would be queen. It's already established. Many were perturbed and confused by Orsted's sudden appearance. But given that Ariel remained calm, they felt obliged to do the same. Underneath their composed exteriors, they were still terrified. You know, this is one of those interesting things, like the fact that she was there pretty much not even bothered by the whole situation. I mean, she was probably bothered, internally, but she was keeping that calm appearance to herself. Due to Orsted bursting in, saving Ariel, and murdering Rada, the nobles could only explain it as the man being one of Pedagus's servants. Their hair and eyes were similar, faces bore certain resemblance, and Pedagus's powerful aura of authority all pointed them to this conclusion. Yeah, that was the other thought process I was going to have, is that not necessarily that it concludes that he was serving Ariel, but serving Pedagus, who is serving Ariel, in a sense. Which again was kind of my answer as to what I thought that was going to happen with Isolde. Because Isolde right now is like seeing that, yes, they just killed Rada, my master, but I'm conflicted in that. And how exactly does that connect to possibly her not liking Ariel? And it is kind of a confusing thing, because like, what signifies that they're connected there? It could be that there's another noble in that room besides Ariel that was threatened by what Rada was doing, and so they controlled Orsted to come in there and kill him. But again, it all comes down to who can control this guy that literally walked in and one-shot a water god. Pedagus. So I don't necessarily see it being connected directly to Ariel, but connecting to Pedagoose for a lot of those people. Pedagoose had a man at his command who could kill a water god in a single blow. Well, it was said right there, Andrew. Sometimes I forget what I read and what I actually thought about at the time. And who had Pedagoose thrown his support behind? Ariel. Anyone opposed to Ariel might find themselves the next target of that monster. This thought, as much as anything else, led them to submit themselves to her. They didn't ask any unnecessary questions of the man's identity. They accepted their new master's reality as their own. Yeah, again, because she's standing there and completely unfazed. Ariel had returned to Asra as a ruthless killer. Darius may have escaped, but he was surely dead by now. The princess had every intention of murdering anyone who stood in her way. Nearly everyone in the room, including the first Prince Grabble, now believed this. It was a testament to the power of Orsted's curse. Yeah, this is probably the negative side effect of everything, is that there is a positive in the fact that Ariel's winning right now. Girl is winning. It is basically hers. But the problem remains that because of how things unfolded, and I think mainly because of the fact that Rada showed up and Orsted showed up, it turned bloody. And the fear of that curse and what it's causing and the side effect of having to rely on Orsted, and it's probably why Orsted didn't initially say, I'll come in there with you, is that it creates this fear and this distrust. Distrust comes with that. In the idea that, yes, originally, Ariel could have just marched an army in there and just kill everybody, or just have everybody assassinated. But that's exactly what Grabble's doing. That's exactly what Darius is doing. And it causes that distrust to the leadership itself. And yes, in the end, Ariel is going to be basically controlling all these people. They're all in fear of them. But that fear is not a good way to start that foundation. I think at some point Ariel had mentioned that. I can't remember who may have mentioned it. Maybe it was Rudius was talking about the whole situation. Maybe he thought about it. This idea that you can't just come in there and just destroy your targets. I think it was in regards to them taking down Darius and using Triss to do that. Is this idea that you can't really just come in there and just kill people, because then all you're going to do is just create this really shaky foundation. You got to create that foundation that you're going to build on, and you can't create that by destroying the previous one and then building on top of it, because you're just building on rubble. So there is sort of a side effect here in that, yes, she's winning. Yes, they're fearful of her, but that fear is not a good way of starting things. But on the opposite end, when you're dealing with a lot of people that are used to this, a lot of people that are doing it themselves, the only way that you can overcome it is by just essentially erasing their connivingness with pure fear. So it's like I'm kind of curious if this is what Ariel had planned, that she wanted to have this be the result, that everybody's afraid of her. But there was one exception. There was one man in the room who knew Ariel better than anyone in the world. And this is technically the side effect as well. One who heard about Orsted from the man god. One man who still viewed Rudius with suspicion. Luke Notos Greyrat. Luke asked himself one question. Should he truly just obey the will of that horrific, evil man and his servant, Rudius? His heart sang with uncertainty and alarm. He couldn't shake the feeling that it was wrong to join forces with Orsted, regardless of the outcome. Even Darius seemed less cruel and loathsome. Yeah. Again, this is that side effect, is that idea that what this fear and murder and death, what it breeds. And I think for Luke himself, and I think it gets into it more in a minute, that's not Ariel. I mean, it said at the very beginning there. There's one man in this room that knew Ariel better than anyone, knew that this wasn't the case. And it kind of plants that seed of distrust in him, like, this isn't her. Like, this isn't what she would want. The man god glowed with holy radiance, with kind, gentle, and thoughtful words. He offered Luke guidance, explained how Ariel would take the throne, warned that Rudius had been seduced by the words of a vicious enemy. But Ariel insisted this god was evil, insisted that he was deceiving Luke, trying to destroy them all. Sure, many of the man god's claims turned out to be lies, but not exactly lies. His words had been vague and ambiguous in a way that led Luke to draw the wrong conclusions. It was my fault. Luke may share the blame in jumping to conclusions. In any case, Luke was Princess Ariel's loyal knight, inclined to take her word over an unfamiliar so-called god with unclear motives. Even if he couldn't manage to believe the same things she did, he'd respect her judgment to the bitter end. Yet you're not. Yet you're not. But now, at the last stage of the game, his feelings shifted sharply. Seeing Orsted with his own eyes changed everything. And that curse is literally what tips him over. That's what's interesting, because it doesn't give an indication that the man god told him, or at least cut him loose and let him go crazy or whatever. Like it was kind of hinting at for a while now. It's literally just because Orsted showed up, that curse is affecting him. Just like with Sylphie and everybody else. They can't trust him. Luke considered himself a skilled evaluator of women, but he wasn't good at sizing up the qualities of a man. He was aware of this weakness, but he knew beyond a shadow of a doubt Orsted was evil. He was a villain to the core, dark god who led men to their ruin. Ariel was simply wrong about him. Most likely, Rudius had been enthralled by him as well. But what was Luke to do? What action should he take, now that he was sure the princess was on the wrong path? Now here's the thing, is like, it's curious how this is the conclusion that he comes to. She's on the wrong path. What path is Ariel on right now? What path she's on right now is that she's won. She has the throne. There's no doubt in that room, Ariel will be queen. And so how does Luke come to the conclusion that this is the wrong path? The wrong path is essentially based here and there about what he just said or thought. Is more on the idea that, yes, she's serving this evil god. He's serving this evil man, rather. He's serving Orsted. And Orsted's evil. And so that could lead to other things? Question mark? I guess that's the conclusion he's coming to. That she's going to be doing more for him in the future. That this is only the beginning of this path that she's going to be serving Orsted, this evil man. But I don't know, it doesn't really necessarily give that indication. Or could it be in the idea that there is the fact that she is winning this based on working for an evil man, and that will cause problems for her in the future? That could be. It's just kind of odd to have essentially two paths here. One, Ariel worked with the evil Orsted. And here, she didn't, and she went the path that he seen this man god do. They're all leading to the same conclusion, but is the fear of what comes next, I guess, is the thing. Again, it kind of goes in that whole area of how mixed up he is in his mind, I guess. Because things didn't really work the way... Again, the curse. Mainly the curse. But how things unfold in the end. Should he express his opinion? But what would that accomplish? Orsted had already taken action. Played his part. Darius and Gravel were all but dead. Ariel had secured the throne. Exactly. At this point, perhaps it was simply too late. Luke was no master with magic or sword. He could accomplish nothing now. The answer was nothing. He felt truly powerless. You were always powerless, Luke. Just then, Paimon, his father, dropped to his knees and put his forehead to the ground. I forgot his voice. I already forgot his voice. Princess Ariel. With a simpering smile on his face, he addressed Ariel loud enough for all to hear. Put on that act, dude. Congratulations, your highness. To think this day has finally come. After all these years of waiting, I had feigned loyalty to Gravel's cause so I could undermine them when the time was right. But it seems such scheming on my part was never even necessary. You've grown into the most formidable figure in your years abroad, it would seem. A number of nobles grimaced in distaste at the man's blatant opportunism. They knew Paimon sent assassins after Ariel following her return. Lord Paimon, it's quite all right, your highness. I know what you're thinking. With few allies, I was obliged to behave in a manner that some might harshly criticize. But I assure you, everything I did was for your sake. Now that the danger's past, everything can be exactly as it was before. I'll provide you with my staunch. Paimon noticed, Grey Rat. You had your safety to consider. Your betrayal was understandable, perhaps, given the weakness of my position. Paimon stared up at Ariel with wide eyes. This was the first time she had shouted at him. But once you have betrayed your ally, have the dignity to stay their foe until the end. In your hour of defeat, you slink back to your former master. Have you no shame? My deepest apologies. Some nobles couldn't quite stifle their laughter at this pathetic display. A crimson blush spread across his face, and his head hung in disgrace. A part of me viewed your changing size as justifiable, since you sought to ensure the survival of your house. As long as you yielded your role to Luke and retired quietly to your lands, I had no intention of punishing you further. But now, you fawn at the feet of the woman you betrayed. You're contemptible beyond words, sir. It is clear that your continued existence will be nothing but a burden on this kingdom. Let death be your apology. That's the sad thing. It's like it's these nobles, dude. Darius did the same damn thing. Now, he had very little chance of it actually working out, but these dudes don't know when to shut up. These dudes literally don't know when to shut up. If he just kept his mouth shut, it would have been fine. Ariel was fine with just sending off Paimon. And it's so great because here in a minute, it kind of compounds and cements what exactly is going on behind the scenes in her mind, probably. I mean, it's in Luke's mind, obviously. But there's this aspect of like, yes, technically this guy did help her. Paimon did help her. Kept her alive. Was supporting her a lot. Got her the path out of here. Secured her escape. It was his idea to send her up there. He was trying to protect her. But he opened his damn mouth. He couldn't keep his mouth shut. Because she's like, okay, he betrayed me. All right. I don't like that. It really sucks. We figure out the situation. We win. Okay, let's address Paimon again later on. Okay, now that we're good, everything's settled, everybody's out of the room. All right, Paimon, get the hell out of here. You supported me, but you did betray me. So it's gonna be neutral here. Get the hell out of here. Just go be at peace. Luke's gonna take over the house. I can't trust you to be at my side anymore. Luke's gonna take it over. Just go away. But he stood in front of every one of these people, all these high nobles, and basically lied straight to her face. Lied straight to her face and aired out this fake facade. Aired out this fake idea of what he was doing. Now she has to do something. That's the problem. He literally presented that now she has to punish him. It sucks. It's like, keep your mouth shut. It's just like the whole thing with Darius and Saros. Shut up. You just literally gave them power fuel. It's crazy. It was then that Luke realized something. Was this all another farce? Ariel probably expected this to happen all along. Perhaps there was a chance her words were true and she hadn't intended to execute Paimon. I think so. Her promise with Ghislaine was hardly binding. She could have talked the woman into sparing his life, and perhaps she meant to do so. Paimon was Ariel's greatest ally for many years, now begging for mercy. His maneuvering had been less than skilled at times, but he had still helped Ariel in countless ways, even securing her escape. Yep. In a sense, she owed this man her life. Ariel hadn't forgotten that. But if she were to forgive him here for his open betrayal, the world would see it as a sign of weakness. That is the problem. That's the problem. He's literally saying and making sure everybody in the room knows, well, he's trying to score him out of it and get on her good side. Oh, it was all a farce. Remember that time that we were alone in that room together and I told you, no, I'm betraying you? That was me trying to make sure that if Grabble overheard our conversation somehow, he would know that I'm still working for him. No, he literally aired out his betrayal in front of everybody. Now she has to do something. That's the problem. Otherwise, again, she looks weak. The world would see this as a sign of weakness, and that would compromise her ability to govern Asura. She might have tolerated allowing him to sneak away in disgrace. But now things have come this far. Her only option was to take his head. Luke, lend me your sword. I'll give him the honor of doing it myself. Paimon looked to his son with a look of terror on his face. His eyes were pleading slightly for Luke to say something on his behalf. As their eyes met, Luke hesitated. Luke knew his father was a coward, but also knew how understandable that was. While he became the head of the family at a young age, he was never suited for it. Luke was his own son, and even he could see what a clumsy, awkward, and anxious leader he was. All poor decisions led to him being compared to his stern and firm-willed father. Even retainers whispered how Paul would have made a better lord. Yeah, I can't see it. I can't see it. I can't see it. I mean, it's one of those aspects that if Paul stayed there and focused on that, or if he was at least forced to focus on it, he obviously left because he didn't want to get involved. And it's sad because it sort of indicated for a while there that Paul, of course, hated his dad. Hated him. And yeah, there is a side that makes you kind of wonder if his father was trying to mold him to be the next lord of the family. And again, it pushed him away. He was sick of it. Get out of there. He did. And again, even later on, way later on, keeps repeating that idea of don't get involved with those nobles. They're so selfish and whatever. He didn't want to get involved. But so it does kind of make you wonder, if he stayed there and kept getting it pounded in his head, would eventually Paul turn into a stern and great leader? If somehow something kept him there, I can see it, I guess, but it's just so hard to see because he was away from the family for so long, and he's weird and goofy and reckless and all this kind of stuff, which again could have been sort of embedded into him from the fact that he left so early and he just became an adventurer. Luke's father had struggled and suffered to no avail. It was no wonder that he'd grown bitter and lost what courage he possessed. Now that he was going to be executed before Luke's eyes, his own actions were ultimately to be blamed. But it may be due to the promise Ariel gave to Ghislaine as well. Luke considered the possibility of his father being involved in Saros' death. They detested each other. Saros had been very close to Luke's grandfather and former head of the Nodos family. The two were almost like brothers, in fact. Alternatively, Saros hated his father from the beginning. Yeah, we heard that. At their first meet, Saros called him a scrawny little runt to his face. And that was only the beginning of the insults and criticisms, goading him at every opportunity once he took over the Nodos family. The displacement incident left Saros vulnerable, so it was easy to see his father taking advantage of it for revenge, even though the man-god's lies convinced him otherwise for a time. Luke studied his father's face in silence. He hadn't seen him in 8 years. No, you seen him when you guys met before all this. Maybe he didn't look at his face during that meeting. I guess that could be. But they talked about the fact they were talking to each other for a while. He hadn't seen him in 8 years. The man looked much older and smaller than he did in his memories. He found himself wishing that he could talk to him without any lies or bluster. When he was a child, they spoke of many things. While his father kept more important matters from him, he always indulged when he brought him questions. His father didn't know everything, of course, often giving answers that were simply incorrect. Still, he always had something to say to him. At times, he would tell him to think it through himself, but even then, would give him the best guidance he could. I hate father talk. I hate father talk so much. Even a dirtbag like Paimon, even a doofus like Luke, and a dirtbag like Paimon. It's like, there's so many stories about fathers and stuff, even if I have no connection to the family whatsoever, or the characters, it's just like, it's just a father aspect. In hindsight, he felt his father doted on him more than his older brother. Perhaps he felt a connection to him as a fellow second son. That was his father in a nutshell. An awkward man who made odd choices in the clumsiest of ways. But he's still his father. Still, he contributed greatly to Princess Ariel's cause for many years. Before their flight from Asra, he struggled against countless enemies on her behalf, trying to position her for the throne. Yes, his motives were self-interested, but as a head of their family, he had an obligation to protect it. Who could truly blame him for joining another faction when all seemed lost? Again, Ariel was okay with that. And she's not okay with it, but she was going to allow that to be it. He sent his men to lead the first attack on Ariel. But again, he surely did this to protect House Notos. He must have been desperate to earn the trust of his new allies in Gravel's faction. And that's the sad part. It's like, it sucks. It's this politics of this time period and everything like that. It sucks and it makes sense. But there's still an aspect of like, over here, Luke joins Ariel, is protecting her. At some point, Ariel decides that she wants to take the throne. Paimon starts backing her, working with all these they were mostly focused on like lower nobles and stuff like that, trying to get everybody else. Like Grab and them are focused on this core here. He was focused on getting everyone else, promising them that they can come up too, and getting all the soldiers, all of them involved as well. He was working on all this stuff with Ariel and getting them all built up. And then things go south. He says, go north. You got to get out of here. Just flee north. I'll give you a route, give you safety, everything like that. She gets out of here. And again, at some point, he assumes she's dead. And I'm assuming based on the fact that he wasn't too shocked with her return as well, and with everybody else probably talking about it, he started working with Gravel and them. He probably learned at some point that she was still alive. And so, even with that report that guy gave, he thought that. Changed factions and everything. Again, he's got to. He's just going to get crushed by Gravel. And again, he's got his entire family to worry about. And yes, it could be self-interest as well. But he had to protect them. But then he hears they're coming back. And now here's the part where it's sad. And yeah, very disgusting. My son, I don't know if he know that Luke was still alive. My son and Ariel are coming back. And Gravel In order to gain his trust, he's asking me to send some troops. Or maybe I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to send troops in order to gain trust of it. She's done. She's coming back. She's done. There ain't no way that she's going to survive. And I got to keep in good with them because I have my future, my family's future in stake. Again, earlier, it was mentioned the idea that Luke asked him, and he said, you wouldn't understand. I think he was trying to protect his family. And the sad reality of that is, did he know Luke was there? He could have thought it was just Ariel. But he essentially sent his troops to kill Ariel and Luke. And that's the sad part of it. That's the real sad part of it. I'm protecting my family name. Luke's got to be a sacrifice. Again, if he knew Luke was there. And again, I think their informants probably could have got that information to them. I highly doubt those reports did not include that Fitz was there and Luke was there. I think they knew for sure Ariel was there, and they probably knew Fitz and Luke were there. Because again, I think they mentioned they were still getting assassins up there. So obviously they were sending assassins up there to kill her. They knew she was there, and they knew who was protecting her. That's sad. That's real sad. Your Highness, I have a request. What is it, Luke? Will you find it in your heart to forgive my father? Ariel turned to Luke, coldness in her eyes that he had seen a great deal in these recent days, particularly after they learned of his father's betrayal. I wonder how much this affected her. I really do wonder, and it doesn't really get into it, but I wonder how much that affects her. Like, how much did she trust? And again, when they found out about the betrayal, it seemed like she was very nonchalant about it, or she was just very dismissive. Like, you knew this was coming. Luke, you told me he was going to betray us. You told me the possibility of this. Basically, you told me he's a spineless little weasel. So I'm not surprised. You shouldn't be surprised. But how much of inside of her is like, we knew that was going to happen, but I kind of wish it didn't. How much is she hurt by this? And again, it's like that coldness in her eyes where she's like, I don't care anymore. Was that betrayal a tipping point for her to grow so cold that she is willing to step in there and cut people down? Was that first sign of what I'm walking into? Before I even get home, this is that first sign of what I'm walking into, despite the fact that I've been having assassins coming after me all the time. I can't do that. Because of Ghislaine? No. Because I can't overlook his betrayal. Of course she couldn't. His father openly turned against her, sending troops to take her head. No matter how friendly they once were, to forgive this would be harmful to her reputation. Luke knew this all too well. Paimon was doomed, and it couldn't be changed. Perhaps that evil god had played some part in arranging this. Perhaps Rudius and Princess Ariel were both being deceived. It didn't change the fact that his father had betrayed them, and yet he didn't want to see this happen. He drew his sword. Again, it is interesting, that idea. He's trying to make sense of it, and I think that curse keeps popping in there. So it's like there's an oddity about this whole segment here, which we're going to get more into in a minute, but it makes sense in the idea of what that curse does. And it is kind of interesting that it never really specifically says it. Like, it doesn't say like, and then Luke was caused to do this by the curse. It literally lets you kind of watch it. So I could be completely baseless, but based on everything we've done before with how this curse works, it makes sense. He just can't trust anything around that guy. He causes a distrust around everything that's happening. Okay, look at this logically. This happened. My dad did this. Ariel did this. My dad did this. It makes sense that this conclusion comes. He says, of course she couldn't. It makes sense. But that evil dragon god thing, it's gotta be him. The curse comes in there and messes with him. So it is kind of interesting how that works. It's not everything that built up till now. I think if Orsted did not show up in that building, if he never showed up, and Petagus shows up and Darius just kind of collapses, Rada never shows up, or maybe Rada shows up and Petagus just goes and kills him or whatever. Doubt it. That would be very difficult, but it could have. I would be curious if Petagus versus Rada. If he was outside of her distance, for sure he'd wreck her, I think. But I think in her zone, I think that's more difficult. Anyways, that aside, if that never happened, if Orsted never showed up, I want to believe that Luke would accept this. Like, yeah, he would be like, crap, I can't believe my father's going to die, all this kind of stuff. I kind of hate this. It's going to wreck him. He's going to probably feel a little bit bad for a while. And it may even affect his trust and love for Ariel. It might affect him in some way. But I think he would have accepted it. In the end, I think he would have accepted it. But because Orsted showed up, he can't stop thinking about that. And it's affecting how he feels about the situation. Luke, forgive me. Huh? He didn't know why he was doing this, but before he knew it, he pulled Princess Ariel into his arms, pressing his blade to her neck. Luke, what are you doing? Sylphie glared at Luke, murder in her eyes. Reese might have hardly recognized her, as she never let him see this kind of fury on her face. In her hand was a Novus rod, suited for practicing the most basic magic, but in her hands, it could fire off spells as powerful as those of royal magician captains. At this moment, it was pointed straight at Luke. Can't you see how bizarre all this is, Sylphie? Have you lost your mind? Get that sword away from her. Luke knew this was a reasonable ask. Had he gone mad? He wasn't sure what he was even trying to accomplish with this stunt. The High Nobles looked at him with confusion and uncertainty. Perhaps he had doomed himself as well. So be it. Again, that's that madness. He just can't trust it. Just something's wrong. I don't know why. It's something's wrong. Tell me, Sylphie, do you really trust that man? What man? Are you talking about Orsted? What does he have to do with anything? Just answer the question. I don't trust him in the slightest. Then why do you obey Reese's every order without question? Perhaps he did this for his family, but he's sworn allegiance to that monster. I don't remember if he was ever told that. Maybe Sylphie had told him that? What he's saying here is, why do you obey Rudius's every order? Perhaps he did this for his family, acknowledging that Rudius is working for Orsted to protect his family, but how does he know that? This implies, and again, I might be forgetting a moment, but this implies that when Luke talked to the man god is told him Rudius is working for that evil man Orsted. He'll say that he's doing it, claiming that he's doing it to protect his family. Maybe the man god basically gave him essentially what Rudius is doing, which is truth. But it's the idea, but why would he tell him that? It would be better for the man god to tell him a lie, or tell him something lacking the full context. A half-truth. Say that he's working for him for his own benefit or whatever, not working for him for his family. Because in saying that Rudius is working for Orsted for his family, it makes him sympathetic. Even right here, sympathetic. Well, he's doing it because he's protecting his family. Well, that's a noble cause. Just like my father, he did that for my family. It's a noble cause. It's curious. It's curious that Luke knows that Rudius is working with Orsted to protect his family. Because in that whole segment is the deeper plot line, which is that he's working with him to fight the man god. And he's working with him in order to protect himself because of what the man god did to him. Specifically, what the man god did to him. The man god was trying to kill Rudius. And so he's working for Orsted to protect his family for the man god. So I can't see the man god pointing this out. Because it shows the truth of what he's doing. That he's evil. It's very questionable. Why? Because I trust Rudy, that's why. Reese is acting on Orsted's behalf, as his direct subordinate. Haven't you noticed any difference in his behavior lately? Are you positive Orsted isn't deceiving him somehow? Luke didn't have any hope of winning Sylphie over to his side. But since her marriage to Rudius, he felt as if Sylphie stopped making her own decisions. Instead of voicing her own opinions, she left her matters to her husband, or did exactly as he said. Ironically, Luke was the one that taught her to behave that way. He told her that a wife should listen quietly to her husband if she wanted to remain in his good graces. Luke's own mother had been a vocal woman, and his father never truly loved her, and their marriage ended in separation. This segment's a little weird, or at least it's not. This is one of those cases where I'm not sure if it's just what we see counters it, and we don't see the bigger picture because it's not written in the story. He says, okay, the first part makes sense. Luke's, I'd have no hope of winning Sylphie over. He just knows that she is devoted to Rudy. Makes sense. But he says ever since her marriage to Rudius, he felt that she stopped making her own decisions. Not true. I mean, at least what I see, it's not true. She's constantly making her own decisions. She chose to keep working at Ariel's side. She chose to do many things. Chose to go against what he even suggested in many cases. She's constantly making her own decisions. I've never seen a point where she's been a yes girl. I mean, that was kind of what I've been joking about for like the last couple Mushoku Mondays, if I remember correctly. Like, especially when we started traveling down south, I was cracking the joke that like, no, she constantly is pushing against him. That was the whole point to that discussion about how she doesn't always listen to him. She supports him, and in a lot of cases, it's because that curse was kind of pushing her in that direction as well. But she's supporting him, but she is making her own mind. So it is a very weird statement, or it could possibly be the idea that that's just what he sees. He sees that. Instead of voicing her opinions, she left matters to her husband. Again, no. She's constantly choosing something else. But that aside, I do like the fact that it's kind of pointing out that, yeah, it seems like he does sort of have This is what he's sort of ingrained upon her. And this is kind of goes along with a lot of other things that she's done. She has, sadly, there's some of it that's very negative, but yes, Luke has, in the past, they've mentioned here and there that Luke has been trying to sort of give her advice. It was like the whole Luke juice thing. It was like this whole thing that he literally went out of his way in order to support her to get with Rudius, help her out with kind of that extra push that she needed in order to, along with Ariel as well, that extra push that she needed to, take him. But yes, the negative side of that was the constant mention about her chest size and everything, which completely messed with her. So yeah, there's a lot of, I guess a lot of this is just really what he sees, and he might not see the whole picture, but even with situations where he's present, she's made a lot of decisions against him. So it doesn't make any sense. Are you even thinking for yourself, Sylphie? Rudius can make mistakes, just like anyone else. You think I don't know that? I think about it constantly. But Rudy's doing what he thinks is best, okay? He swallows up his pride and submits to us. He does everything he can, no matter how humiliating it is. What am I supposed to do? Argue with him and make things even harder? At least this way, I can take some of the burden off his shoulders. She was clear and firm. In her thoughts, Rudius came first, even before herself. It felt as if she changed a great deal in these last few years, but perhaps Luke simply hadn't known her as well as he thought. I think there is a massive misunderstanding here that Luke has. Luke knew her when she was displaced, put into the palace, very young age. It was 10 or something. She was very young. It's a child. It's a child. And being displaced and being in a foreign place, nobody that she knows around her, nobody she can trust around her, Ariel brings her in, and alongside Luke. And they're basically trying to survive. And she's protecting Ariel, having to defend against assassins that are going to harm her as well. This is a child having to now fight for survival, kill people, defend herself, defend Ariel. She has nothing. And so, yeah, she really had no purpose but to submit to Ariel and help Ariel, eventually want to help Ariel as a friend because Ariel supported her. Over time, learning what kind of person Ariel actually is and her sweet, charming words and Luke working along his side and all the things that Luke said and everything, they became a pair of friends here. So obviously the point in which she is reestablishing, somebody from her past, Rudius, falls in love with him and starts to go with him. No, she's going to be different. She's going to be different. She's obviously going to change. She's going to have a new purpose in her life. A purpose is restored in her life. Now she has something that she can go forward towards. Having a relationship with somebody is completely different than being friends with somebody. She's going to have new purpose in her life and a new goal in her life. And her life is going to change a lot. And yeah, I think there's a side of it that I don't think Luke really knew her. Because again, yes, they had a lot of fun behind the scenes talking with each other. They kind of point out a few times where they were just, in the student council room or whatever, and they just kind of were friends with each other. A very much so different persona than when they're outside and Fitz is quiet, never talks, walks around with them. So there was times where they actually could, kind of relax and talk with each other. They even have these moments where they would spout back and forth, like the whole situation with Rudius declaring marriage to Sylphie. Them just like spouting back and forth. But this is different. She's growing up. She's not quite there because she's still young. I mean, let's face it. Sylphie is still a teenager. At this point, she is still a teenager. She's still growing up. And this is the point in which her life where she's going to be growing a lot and maturing a lot. So yeah, she's going to be different. She's not going to be the Fitz you remembered. And what if your blind loyalty puts Princess Ariel in danger? He pressed his sword against the neck of his master. He was using the side of the blade. This wouldn't prevent him from being executed as a traitor, but he couldn't risk cutting Princess Ariel. He's literally doing the side of it so that he doesn't mark her and scar her. Again, it kind of shows that he never had intention for it. And I think there's a side of me that in the end, I think that Ariel knew that. I don't think Sylphie knows that right here, because I think there is a side of it that Rudius sort of implanted in her head that Luke's going to do this. Watch Luke. And I almost think because she didn't stop him, now she's angry. She said it back there, anything that if he does turn against Ariel, I'll get him. I'll kill him myself. She was ready for this. But I think there was a side of it that she didn't think it was going to happen. And again, I think that partly is because, the whole situation with Orson and everything. But here, I think she's truly off. But at the same time, I don't think Ariel thinks he's going to do anything. And I don't think Luke had an intention of doing anything. He just he's mixed up right now. It was simply wrong to mar a woman's skin with scars. Even when holding a hostage, Luke is trying to be a ladies' man. He's trying to be a charming ladies' man even when he's taken her hostage. You're the one with the sword against her neck. That was an excellent point. But just then, the hall doors opened and Rudius stepped in the room. Listen, Sylphie, by accepting everything Rudius says, you're making yourself a pawn of that horrifying creature Orsted. Fine, so what? Consider what that might mean. In a situation like this one, Luke looked to Rudius, who was scanning the room, perhaps trying to make sense of what was going on. His gaze then paused at some point, before looking away with a disappointed expression. Luke realized he had been looking at Pedagoose. Despite the drama unfolding before him, the man sat casually in his chair, looking utterly unconcerned. There was a small, amused smile on his lips. Pedagoose is like, amuse me. This is about, I don't know, I think there's a little bit further, but this is about the point where this chapter started losing me. This is what when I first read it, we'll see this time around, but the first time I read through this is where this chapter started losing me. Not the whole Pedagoose thing, because I expect that from Pedagoose. But everything up until now is like, holy crap, betrayal. Luke's losing his mind. Sylphie's like, what the f are you doing, dude? Put her down. All this stuff is happening. Rudius comes storming in. I'm like, holy crap. Here is the epic betrayal. This is going to be crazy. This has been building up to this for like, what? The last 2 or 3 volumes has been building up to this moment. And then it goes like some weird cheesy route. And it's like, why are we acting like this suddenly? He's got Princess Ariel and the nobles are around them and there's bodies laying on the floor. Like several people are dead. What are we doing? If you want to save Princess Ariel, kill Rudius here and now. Sylphie's eyes went wide. What would your answer be if I made such a demand? You could be forced to choose between the two. And what would you do then? Luke knew it was an ugly, unfair question. But it's a question that's already been answered. Here's the first part where it starts to lose me. I think it was right here where it started losing me. This has already been established. This was already established before. Like, why are we establishing this again? This was way back there. I think even before the marriage itself. Ariel said, go to him. Be with him. That was why I was so confused after the marriage that Sylphie was still going to work. Because even she was saying, you know, you're no longer working as Fitz and whatnot. I think she, again, my assumption there was that, yes, Sylphie's still going to support her. Still going to make sure that she gets to the throne. None of that changes. And even when she gets pregnant, too. But it's been established already that she chose Rudius and that she would eventually leave Ariel's side. It's already been established. Why even ask this question? Luke knew it was an ugly, unfair question. He wasn't even sure why he was asking it. Unsure if it was what he wanted to say. I'd choose Rudy. I hate to say that in front of Princess Ariel, but you've already done that. But if Rudy wasn't the most important person to me in the world, I never would have married him in the first place. I would never have had a child with him. This made Luke slightly sad to hear. Again, it's already been established. And he imagined it was the same for the princess. No, because she told her to. Rudius brought both of his hands to his mouth, but failed to cover his smug grin. Again, just... why now? The man could be truly obnoxious sometimes. I'll stick with Rudy no matter what. I don't know how it will turn out in the end. For all I know, Orsted might decide that he doesn't need us anymore. But no matter how ugly things get, I'm gonna be there helping Rudy. I mean, that's what I signed up for, right? Those words hit Luke like an arrow through the chest. She was right. He felt it in the pit of his stomach. And he found one of the answers he was struggling for. Despite my frustration with how, like, cheesy this gets right here, again, from Sylphie's perspective, Luke has just turned on Ariel. Has a blade to her neck. Again, I don't think Ariel thinks that Luke's gonna do it. And yes, there's a part of it because literally he's put the flat part to her neck. She in the position that she, I mean, he could easily turn it and go. I mean, even as a unskilled person as he is, he could easily turn it and go. But then you have Rudius coming in. Again, you have bodies all over the place. Tensions are high, and then it kind of just turns into this kind of like confession thing. Like it's not Refugian's best writing. There's way too much tension here, and it almost feels like this is the part where he's trying to turn it into a cheesy romance moment, and a comical cheesy romance moment. But even with that aside, right here it kind of pivots in a way that I do like, and I think this is probably why we are sort of readdressing something that has already been addressed. Like I said, Luke, Sylphie, Ariel, the three of them have already established this. They've already established that Sylphie is gonna be with Rudius. that she is choosing Rudius over Ariel. But in rehashing something that has already been established, which makes me think that they've forgotten that they established this already, which is technically a plot hole, it does put into perspective for Luke the idea of signing up for something. Sylphie signed up to be with Rudius. Luke signed up to be with Ariel. They're both in the same. No matter what's behind them, no matter if Orst is behind Rudius, she's going to support him. She signed up for that. Who cares that Orsted might be backing Princess Ariel? I signed up for this. She is my princess. He is my husband. I signed up for this. I did too. That's the only positive that comes out of it, even though it doesn't. It's technically has a lot of flaws in it, I guess, and how it plays out. Letting out a chuckle and a small sigh, Luke wondered what he was doing here and thinking. His role was to aid Princess Ariel, even if she stumbled, even if she chose poorly, and even if her cause looked lost. He wanted to be the man who would always be there, regardless of the circumstances. That was what he signed up for. As her knight. What did it matter if Orsted was an evil god? True, he would rather obey the man god than that creature, but would he follow the man god over Ariel? Question. It wasn't a question worth considering. It was his duty to respect her decisions, obey her commands, and risk his life to protect her if she chose poorly. It never had to be more complicated than that. His own words had come back and hit him in the face. Now then, Luke, now that Sylphie has chosen Rudius, will you be cutting off my head? Huh? If so, I would like some time to speak with my brother first. Perhaps he'll allow Sylphie and the others safe passage outside of Asra. Do you mind? Her voice seemed strangely calm. Again, I don't think she believes he would do it. She's literally going, all right, if you're going to do it, she's literally trying to snap him out of it. Let me figure out things so I can get them out of here. No. You're not going to ask me why I'm doing this? No. That made Luke sad. He's like, take it more seriously. What, you don't think I can do it? You don't think I can do it? I think it's more of an idea of like, you're not mad that I betrayed you. Like, I don't think she thinks that you would. That made Luke sad. He could hardly defend himself now that things went this far. But it seemed the princess truly believed that he betrayed her. He had been at her side since they were children, supporting her in every way he could. He put her interest and needs over his own, and she still believed he was capable of turning on her at the journey's end. Or so he thought, until she followed up. Yeah, again, this right here is literally paralleling the two of them. Again, despite my anger about how they're rehashing this stuff, Luke, Sylphie, Ariel, Rudius. They've been together since they were children, supporting him all along the way. Well, beside this displacement incident and that massive, 8-year gap or whatever. There's only one thing that I would like to say to you, Luke. I am your princess. He nearly broke into tears. Those words were reward enough for him. Even after what he'd done, the princess still seen him as her knight. She never believed he could betray her, even if a sword was at her neck. I think there is a side of it. Yes, again, I'm going back to, I fully believe she knew that he wasn't going to do it. I do think there is a side of it that's like, damn it, Luke, why would you do it here in front of everybody? Because this makes things more complicated. But again, there's a lot of things those people do that get away with. They do a lot of things they can get away with. And she literally shows it here in a minute. Everybody in this room is terrified of me. I could literally just start bang, 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 and nobody would care. They would literally be like, okay, please just not me, and I won't tell anybody. That's that whole idea right there. There is a side of it that I almost wonder that she believes, if I couldn't control him, it's my own fault. It's just like the whole thing with Rudius and everything. And the idea that she knew, you're too powerful, I can't control you, so no, I'm not gonna have you work for me. That power will destroy you. Is that whole play that she was talking about. So there is an idea of it like, if he betrays me, it's my own fault. Just like when she went out with Rudius to go see Orsted. If you turn on me and kill me, that's my own fault. I trusted Luke. If he betrays me, it's my own fault. Accepting her fate because she made that mistake. Luke tossed his sword aside, breaking the silence as it hit the floor. He released Ariel, stepped back, and knelt before her. Looking up, she was staring at him with some familiar coldness in her eyes. Tell me, Luke, what are you? I am your knight. She smiled kindly at those words. She then moved his hair aside and exposed his neck. I'm ready, your highness. Give me the proper punishment for my treachery. He didn't want to die, and there was a great deal left for him to do. But so be it. He could accept this. Princess Ariel took his sword, lifted it awkwardly in one hand, and smacked his head with the side of the blade. A dull shock of pain radiated across his skull. It seemed your legendary lust drove you to a fit of madness, Luke. I can't imagine any other reason you would have to grab a princess in your arms and molest her in such a matter. That's your cover story. That's your cover story. Ordinarily, such a crime would be warrant severe punishment, but I'll let you off the hook this time, as I happen to be in a mood for a bit of groping. Again, the nobles and royalty, they're freaky. And everybody in the room knows that. Good cover story, though. Good cover story. Nobody believing that. Looking at Princess Ariel, her gaze met Luke with a playful smile and a wink. How long had it been since he had seen this expression? That sucks. Her smiles were mostly forced these days, but when they were children, she'd often grin like this. That is kind of a sad thing to think. Things have changed so much. It seemed he was forgiven. His words and deeds should be construed as betrayal, but she wasn't even going to punish him for them. Princess Ariel then turned to Luke's pale-faced father. As soon as her gaze settled on him, he prostrated himself on the ground before her. What shall we do with you? Luke felt that the princess finally found some way to pardon him. No, I think there is a side of this that kind of makes me believe that she sort of realized that she doesn't need to be as ruthless. Like, she already has the power, and I don't think that she's going to be seen as weak right now. So she technically can take advantage of how everybody fears her and not just kill everybody. And again, use her power to pardon who she chooses. Again, that whole idea that the royalty itself is corrupt and they'll justify things the way they want. They'll punish the ones they choose. But I think there is a side that this whole situation with Luke sort of snapped her out of that cold-bloodedness. Oh, or she killed Arita. Go get Darius. Kill him. Who's next? Palman, you're next. Like, getting stuck in the bloodlust, I guess. Getting drunk off the power as well, you could probably put it that way. And I think this whole situation may have snapped her out of it. But Palman's misdeeds were grave. They needed to find some justification, some reason for a pardon. Suddenly, Rudius stepped forward to speak. When we cornered him, Darius revealed that he was the one who arranged Saros' death. Lord Palman was just a pawn in this game from the sound of things. And what had become of Darius? We killed him. I see. In that case, I think we might as well assign him all the blame. Ariel turned to look at Ghislaine and Edis, who had slipped behind Luke at some point. They may have cut him down from behind if he kept holding Ariel much longer. Yeah, that's like one of those moments of like, oh damn. Good thing I let go when I did. Ghislaine, can you accept that? Well, Ghislaine looked distinctly displeased at the suggestion. Perhaps she was determined to cut down Luke's father. Before she could raise an objection, Edis yanked Ghislaine's tail. With a jerk of surprise, she turned to her people. Edis folded her arms and stuck her chin in the air. Ghislaine, we got revenge for Grandfather Saros already, all right? Don't be greedy, if you say so, mighty Edis. Yank. Stop it. You got enough blood. Chill. It is kind of curious why did Edis speak up for Luke? Is it to apologize for punching him? Is she doing this to apologize for punching him? Because, I mean, right here, again, Rudius comes in, says it was Darius. Darius pushed Palman. But in everybody's mind, everybody's fully aware of this. In that room, everybody's fully aware of this. Darius pushed Palman, used Palman to kill Saros. What's the equation there? Palman is still involved. Palman still took part in it. Yes, he was manipulated. Yes, he was pushed by Darius, but he was still involved with it. And everybody knows that Palman hated Saros. And so Rudius comes in here, says this to Ariel. Ariel then turns and says, is that okay, Ghislaine? I think there is a side of it that, yes, Edis is kind of being a little bit level-headed here and going, you know, look, what Ariel's asking is, can we pardon Palman, basically? Do we really have to still kill Palman? Is that okay with you? Let's just let's put it all on Darius and move on with our lives. Ariel's asking Ghislaine, is that okay to no longer blame Palman? And again, Edis yanks her tail. Don't be greedy. We got Darius already. We got revenge already. Essentially, pardon Palman for killing my grandfather. Why would Edis do that? It's very curious. Is it because she feels that Rudius had come to that conclusion and she's supporting that idea? Is it because she feels some sympathy for Luke? It's a very curious question. I'm curious if they'll actually get into it later on. And my assumption is that this is a sign that Edis is getting better at reading the room. And she's obviously come to the conclusion that this is the case. Ghislaine still doesn't read the room. Ghislaine is still not quite there at reading the room. But Edis has learned how to read the room. If you say so, Lady Edis. At those words, Princess Ariel turned back to Palman with a satisfied expression on her face. There you have it, Lord Palman. I'll issue my judgment at a later date. Yes, Your Highness. Paimon threw himself to the ground once again, groveling in gratitude. He wouldn't get off without punishment, but his life was spared. I'm sorry, Luke. His words were barely audible, but Luke was close enough to hear them. Relief washed over him. I hate dad talk. Even with Paimon, I hate dad talk. Ugh. It's like, I think at this point, Paimon finally... That facade is finally done. Like, you remember Luke said earlier, I wish I could talk to my father right now without all the lies around us. And just talk to him. Father and son. And I think after she basically pardoned him, finally, like, I have no reason to be lying anymore. I want to tell my son I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. Nearly killing you. Not, essentially fighting against you. You were on the other side of the battlefield. He's apologizing for all that. Looking around the room, Rudius was speaking with Sylphie, arms around him as he stroked her head. Edis and Ghislaine were discussing something so loudly that it could be heard clearly. Edis proudly explaining that you had to read the room sometimes. There it is. I forgot about this, actually pointing that out. I totally forgot about her pointing that out. Okay. All right. I swear that I didn't remember that part. I swear I don't remember that part. I think when I got that part, when I read it, I thought that she was talking about Rudius and Sylphie. That there's bodies, again, there's bodies laying around. Rada's body's over here. Isolda's cradling her, crying. This is crazy in here. Everybody's terrified. They have the after effects of Orsted. And I figured that Edis was pointing out that Rudius and Sylphie need to read the room. But then, it didn't make sense to me when I read it that way because I don't see her criticizing them. Like, Edis would be like, I want to go. like, Edis would be perfectly fine with just grabbing Rudius and just going at it in this room with everybody around. Edis would be perfect. If Rudius turned to Edis and said, let's do it right here on this table that's broken, she'd be like, all right, let's do it. So, again, it kind of didn't make any sense when I read it. Now it makes sense. She literally is telling Ghislaine, you should read the room sometimes. That is so funny. I'm sorry, guys. I just went into this long tirade, and I didn't even realize it explains it later. It was probably something that Rudius had taught her. Pedagoose was the same as ever, still planted in his seat, with a highly entertained expression. It was hard to guess what the Armored Dragon King found so amusing, honestly. Paimon was still groveling on the floor, looking small, but color returning to his face. The novice knight, Isolde, was weeping quietly as she cradled the body of the water god in her arms. She didn't seem inclined to head to their direction. It seemed Darius was dead. Prince Grabble had lost his greatest ally. He was slumped in his chair, looking exhausted. There was a small crowd hovering around him even now, but it's hard to imagine him trying anything. The nobles of Princess Ariel were looking on in utter bewilderment. Triss amongst them, standing next to her parents. They had no enemies left to fight. The battle for Asura was over. Grads Ariel, unless she dies here soon. I don't know. I've only read the next, like, what, 2 chapters? 1? No, I don't think I've read 13 yet. Anyways, yeah, great into it. I think this time reading through this was much better than the first time reading through it. But again, I still think there's an inconsistency in this chapter with how it seems like they're reestablishing something that's already been established. We already know this. We already know that Sylphie has chosen Rudius. We already know that she will leave Ariel's side. And it feels like Luke is just figuring this out. Again, it could be partly because he's gone crazy because of everything with Orsted. But again, I acknowledge the idea that this is all to show the parallels between the two of them. And I think what Refugium was doing here is going, okay, I need a way that Luke figures this out. I need to have some way that Luke reconnects himself to Ariel and what he's doing. And the best parallel that I can find in this room right now, let's parallel it with Sylphie and Rudius. But again, I think the fault there is that it re-establishes something that's already been established. And again, it's kind of cheesy because, again, there's bodies and everything all over the floor, and they're doing this big, like, confession scene in front of everybody, and it's just kind of... It didn't feel right, especially with how I left the previous chapter. I left the previous chapter going, holy crap, Luke's finally done it. He's gone crazy. What's going to happen? Oh my gosh, it's a hostage situation, and he's literally betrayed what we've established now is the queen of the kingdom. And it turns in this cheesy thing. It's weird. Again, just not my favorite of his writing so far. Anyhow, let's jump into Chapter 12, 10 Days in the Capital and the Truth About Orsted. This chapter so teased me. I thought we were going to get some crazy big reveals. Again, there's one juicy reveal, but yeah. 10 days pass since the battle in the palace. In the end, Ariel opted to strip Paimon of his role as the head of the Notos Grey Rats and confined him to their domain. Luke would be assuming the leadership of the family, with his elder brother acting as his assistant. Luke's brother had excellent social skills and seemed to be the budding politician, so Rudius assumed that he'd end up handing him the day-to-day operations of the family. Yeah, that was a little bit question mark there. Like, how well of a relationship does he have with his brother that he'd be willing to have his brother be at his side? Because technically, his brother was a political opponent, so to speak. So to have him at his side is kind of dangerous, question mark. But I guess to that note, if something happened to Luke and, you know, possibly his brother caused it, maybe poisoned him or something, it's not as if he takes out Luke, suddenly Ariel's going to give him the head of the family. It might actually work against him. So it's better that he's working at Luke's side than the alternative where he takes him out and then Ariel gives it to somebody else and gets rid of him. At first, Ghislaine continued to view Paimon and his sons with undisguised hostility. However, her attitude softened after Luke's brother barraged Eddis with praise and proposed marriage. It's just, it runs in the family. They all want Eddis. They just all want her. Luke's over there like, yeah, I get it, but don't try. But again, it's kind of like that thing of like, Eddis is the same way with Rudius. Ghislaine's the same way. Oh, somebody's praising my student. Okay, you're a good person. It was like a proud dog hearing her master being complimented. It so happened Ghislaine accepted an offer to continue serving as Ariel's bodyguard. This would probably be a permanent post. While Rudius didn't know what everyone thought, it felt to him that things settled reasonably well. Going back to the beginning of those 10 days, after the battle, they returned to Ariel's residence in high spirits, flushed with victory. Ariel had gone to sleep immediately, being understandably tired. Yeah. Rudius quickly brought Sylphie up to their room and lavished her with love. Honestly, he had been a bit anxious about her feelings ever since reading about her leaving him in the diary. Hearing her declare he was the most important person in the world set his heart aflutter. Still, she was pretty worn out, so he wrapped things up after round 1. Yeah, that does make sense to me. I think that was something that I sort of picked up with back during the diary thing. He read the diary. At some point in the diary, she literally leaves. She leaves Lucy, she leaves Rudius, goes off with Ariel, ends up dead. And there was a lot of question mark there as to... I mean, the assumption there was that, yes, the future self turned into a dirtbag. And so she may have left him because she was fed up. He was sleeping with some rando, and he comes back home, and she is just heartbroken, locks herself up and everything, and eventually leaves. And sadly, there's no indication that she told anybody anything, but we don't know if future Rudius didn't hear it. I mean, she could have told Lilia, hey, can you take care of Lucy and look after Rudius? I need to go. I'll be back. No, it just literally indicates she left. And specifically, and the thing that jumped out at me, everything he gifted her, she left behind. She took everything else, just the things that he gifted her, she left behind. That was sort of the indication to me that this was something worse than just, oh, I'll be right back. It sounded like me, like she literally was fed up. And it would make sense that the idea that maybe she would eventually come back, but it would make sense to me that that's the conclusion you can come to, that she literally chose Ariel. Well, Ariel needs me. She's my dearest friend. When you have Rudius and Sylphie, what we're establishing here is that it's literally Rudius, Ariel, everyone else. So if things aren't working out with Rudius, she's going to be taking care of Ariel. She'll stay at Ariel's side at that point. So yeah, I can see why he would have that fear here. Like, oh yeah, finally I've heard what I need to hear. I've had this anxiety, and I'm surprised that he didn't point this out at some point. That yeah, equally with that, she keeps choosing things that are not what he's proposing to Ariel. So again, it makes sense that he would have that anxiety there. She does a lot of things that teases him and stuff like that, and I do acknowledge the idea that Rudius has still, to this point, has issues with trust. To this point, he still has issues with trust. Yeah. After heading to the bath, Eddis barged in with residual excitement and subjected him to some rough loving of his own. The woman needed to learn how to be a little more gentler with delicate boys like him. The next morning, he was informed by a maid that a letter was dropped off for him. The usual dragon crest seal, and a letter inside from the dragon god. It expressed concern for his injuries and asked to meet him the same day. Their meeting place was a cemetery for servants at the edge of the nobility's district. It was a quiet, isolated island of grass in the middle of the city. Underneath the surface was a catacomb. It looked like a place ideal for a late-night zombie party. It was creepy, but no undead creature could be more terrifying than the man waiting for him inside.
You're here, Rudius Grey Rat.
Of course, as you requested, sir. Orsa was sitting on a coffin with his chin on his hand. It felt disrespectful to the dead. So Rudius made them chairs and a table with earth magic. Please, have a seat.
My thanks. First of all, congratulations for a job well done, Rudius. It is now guaranteed that Ariel will be king.
Is it really guaranteed? The king won't pass away for a while now, right? The king's illness couldn't be cured. He was essentially dying of old age. But it was going to take some time for that to happen. That's where I was like, I think he was heading over there to finish it off. But they never mention it. I was like, literally, I think he's going to kill him. Ariel herself warned them that it was too early to get careless. Additionally, there was unpredicted factors to consider. Water King Isolde had watched her beloved master die, and the Boreas family had close ties to Darius. Both would require careful monitoring. In all honesty, Rudius expected that his next job would involve mopping up the remaining opposition. That would have been bad. Could you imagine that? Like, literally, okay, your next step is you're going to go around, you're going to kill the Boreases, you're going to kill them, you're going to kill them, and literally Rudius is going to be going around having to kill a bunch of people. I was like, you stained your hands with Darius's blood.
Rest assured, between Pedagus's endorsement and the death of Darius, Ariel's victory has become certain.
He was confident, but Rudius couldn't understand why. Still, it was obvious that Orsted was no longer the slightest bit concerned about the outcome.
You look rather puzzled, Rudius Grey Rat.
Well, Sir Orsted, in all honesty, I think it's too early to let your guard down. I mean, well, sometimes things don't work out exactly as you foresee, right? It feels like we wrapped this up really quickly. Isn't there at least a chance that the man god still has a trick up his sleeve?
No, I can say that with certainty.
It seemed Orsted was still hiding something from him, and it seemed that he didn't have any intention of changing that. Well, I was a disciple once. Guess it makes sense to keep me in the dark. Rudius regretted immediately as those words slipped out. Orsted rose to his feet and glared at him more intensely than usual. Yikes, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean it like that. It's not like I'm complaining about you keeping things from me, but I just...
It's true, Rudius Grey Rat. I never completely trusted you.
Rudius activated Eye of Foresight and looked for an escape route. It was no good. Shadowy image of Orsted had surrounded him at all sides. If he jumped and tried to flee, he'd cut him off in no time. He just had to prepare himself for the worst.
In fact, I monitored you throughout the mission to see if you might betray me for the man god.
There it is. Finally kind of revealing it. Now, this is sort of my assumption that I'm making right here at this point is that, okay, that's the reason why he never came in there and helped, like, just take everybody out. Like, he can do, oh, Auber's hiding in a hole waiting for Rudius to come around the corner. He goes over and he marks the tree. No, just go over there and go, boop. Like, he just walk over to the hole, boop. Like, I'm sure he probably knew he was in there. Probably seen him come in there. I don't know. There's a chance that he knew exactly where Auber is. He knew at least that the army was there. He could go around and go boop, 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 boop. Everybody's just, he walks up, they're all terrified, and he just go up and just, poop, make a bunch of donuts, make a massive donut shop. He had the opportunity there. Why? There's a side of me that's like, okay, he was testing Rudius. Seeing what Rudius would do. See if Rudius would betray him. Or was he always watching Rudius? Waiting to see what Rudius would do? Think about it this way. Orsted's goal here is that Ariel gets on that throne. And now Rudius, who used to work for the man god, is now walking with Ariel down to Asura. Who is the biggest threat for Ariel to make it to Asura? Is it Auber? Is it the soldiers? No. Edis, Ghislaine, they can all handle those. What is the biggest threat? The closest one that can turn and kill Ariel at any moment? Rudius. The thing that he was watching for is to make sure that Rudius didn't kill Ariel. It's a good thought process. It's an interesting thought process, I guess. That made sense to Rudius. Orsted could have taken out Auber or anyone else, but it may have been a test of sorts.
But after your performance in this matter, it's clear to me that you're not just talk. You are a man worthy of my trust. Allow me to offer you an apology, Rudius Grey Rat. Part of what I've told you about myself is a lie.
Really? Orsted scowled at this question. No, maybe it was a thoughtful frown. Rudius wished he would practice the art of smiling. It would make talking to him less stressful. However, Rudius knew he had problems of that in that department himself. I need some fan art. It's probably already out there, so somebody could probably find it. If you can think of something, there's probably art out there somewhere. I need fan art of literally like Rudius and Orsted sitting in like little school desks, And then there's like a big chalkboard, a whiteboard, and then Aisha's up there pointing at like some stuff on the whiteboard with like a smile. They're both having to get lessons from Aisha at the same time. Or just like the back of Aisha's head, and then it just has Rudius and and Orsted sitting there crouched down there going this with their fingers. Anyways, sorry. Went too far in that one.
Yes. Do you recall when I explained the secret art created by the first dragon god? I told you that it enabled me to see the flow of destinies and exempted me from the laws of this world.
I remember. This was the general path of someone's future it allowed him to see.
Half of that explanation was a lie. I can see nothing whatsoever of what lies ahead.
So that means you really are exempt from the laws of this world, right?
Indeed. But let me ask you this, Rudius Grey Rat. What do you think that means precisely?
Reese didn't remember him dropping any hints about this. Maybe it was about the curse. The one that makes everyone hate him. No, he couldn't see how that was connected. Well, you said it dramatically slows the rate of your mana regeneration, but that's just a side effect, right?
Yes, my mana regenerates very slow, and in exchange, I am immune to the man god's meddling. Don't you find this odd, however? Why would the first dragon god have created an art that puts its user in such an enormous disadvantage?
It could be the only way for him to hide from the man god. The trade-off might be worth it. No. That didn't make much sense. The man god can't see Rudius when he's wearing Orsted's bracelet, and his mana regeneration is just fine.
Allow me to explain. This secret art was created to guarantee victory against the man god. In exchange for crippling the user's mana regeneration, it allows them to redo this war from the start with their memories intact, no matter how or when they die. My starting point is the winter of the year 330 in the Armored Dragon era. I return to a nameless forest in the northern region of the central continent. From that moment, I have 200 years. Unless I kill the man god by the deadline, I am returned automatically. The same thing occurs when I die at some point along the way.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this changes things a bit. Not like I said, when I got to this point, this is about where I kind of took a break, and I was like, okay, there's gonna get some crazy stuff. Let me take a break, get the other Mushoku Monday done. Wasn't really. I was expecting more to come after this, but this is plenty. I'm not mad. I mean, this is a big reveal. Now, initially, my massive question mark came up of why does this matter? He said, I told you I didn't trust you, so I didn't tell you anything. And it does make sense, because if you go back to that point where he met with Rudius and he started divulging everything about himself, yeah, when it came to the question mark of how he knew about like their destinies and the futures and the history or whatever, it seemed like he was kind of dancing around it, or he was maybe possibly telling him a lie. Orsted was being very careful with his words, and this is probably why. He was trying to figure out how he can tell Rudius how he knows what's happening without telling him that he's experienced it over and over and over and over again. And so that makes sense there. But he is curious, why does that matter? Why does it matter that the man god might know that he's repeating it? Is there something the man god's going to do within, which is right at this point, the next 105 years that's going to affect it? Because he says basically 330 is when the starting point. And that is roughly 105 years ago. Rudius was born in 407, and it's 425 now. So that means that Orsted right now in this era is 105 years old. And yes, that technically means that he has until the point that Rudius is 123 before it starts over. Or if he dies before, then it starts over. So the question mark that I had was, okay, he's repeated this over and over and over and over and over and over again. And why does it matter if in this one, the man god finds out that he essentially he's in a loop? And if he kills the dragon god, he's going to reset. Is it because there's a fear that the man god will stop attacking Orsted and immediately start to manipulate people to figure out how to stop him from resetting? That's probably why. But still, it's like even at this point to tell Rudius, it sounds like a bad decision. Like, yes, he trusts Rudius now, but what if the man god somehow manages to manipulate him again and get that information out of him? Or what if Rudius slips that out to somebody, maybe unintentionally tells the man god through somebody else? There's a lot of fears there, but it's curious how this specific thing is something that Orsted fought really hard not to let Rudius know, and it seemingly, based on this conversation, because he wasn't sure if Rudius would tell the man god. It's very curious. But yes, it does technically put it in line with this whole prophecy, this idea that at some point Rudius' descendants will help will help Orsted, is because yes, Rudius will be about 100 if he lived to 123. That would put it in line with yes, not technically have to be his next generation, but the following generation, or even the following generation after that, would be the ones that would stand at Orsted's side. And again, it puts it right in line with that. It literally can't go much further than that before Orsted has to get reset. It's going to restart. So he was stuck in a time loop. The possibility did occur to Rudius before, but he found it too strange to believe.
An outlandish story, I'll admit. But you have seen a man travel through time with your own eyes. Surely you're capable of believing this.
That was the other thing. I think that was kind of one of those aspects of sort of tipping the hand there, and the idea that, yes, he didn't seem too shocked about the idea of Oldius. Well, yes, Rudius' future self found hints about the principles of time travel in ancient Dragonfolk runes. Also, they had created a reincarnation technique that sent their souls to the future. He could easily believe they'd work out a way to jump back in time as well, especially since his future self figured out how to do it by himself. So can I ask how many times you reset so far, Sir Orsted?
I stopped counting at 100.
200 years times 100 would be 20,000 years? Just thinking about it was making Rudius dizzy. Yeah, that's a lot. And again, it does play into what we're going to come into in a minute, and which I think is sort of necessity that Orsted gets into this, because yes, if he's trying to explain to Rudius why this is this way, it's because he's done this a lot of times. But I do have an argument against that, which we'll get into.
I've traveled this loop hundreds of times by now, I suppose. And in the course of those attempts, I've witnessed Ariel and Gravel's battle many times. I know what matters to this outcome, and I know who matters. I know what will lead to Ariel's triumph and her defeat. And at this stage, it's simply impossible for Gravel to turn things around. Ariel's victory is assured.
Nope. Nope. Even with the man god meddling with events?
Even so, the man god does not maintain his memories of our past conflicts, and is therefore unaware that I am trapped in this time loop. But after I learned of his existence and began my war against him, he has meddled in conflicts of this kind numerous times. And in every instance, there comes a point when he ceases to interfere.
And we just passed that point?
Precisely.
That explained why Orsted made his predictions with such confidence. He was speaking from a truly huge amount of experience. Reese still felt like the events might take an unexpected turn. But when you put the same group of people into the same situation, they were probably going to act the same way every time. There had to be some minor differences in the circumstances this time around, but the odds of complete surprise did seem very low. But Rudius is there. That is the anomaly. A massive displacement incident happened. The appearance of Nanahoshi, who doesn't age, has no mana, and is brilliant when it comes to summoning magic and magic in general. Rudius, who came out of nowhere from another world, who can do silent spellcasting and has a massive mana pool, has one of Laplace's aspects. 3 very, very huge things happened in this timeline, this specific timeline. Orsted has confirmed this has never happened in any of the previous timelines. Suddenly, these 2 variables suddenly appear. Things have changed massively. Now, I see the perspective here of Orsted and the idea that even with Rudius and Nanahoshi and the displacement incident all being involved, things have technically still panned out the way that he wanted it and he was expecting it to do. Even with, again, in the terms of the kingdom itself, the displacement incident being a massive change in how things play out. Like, I even question, would Saros be in that room? Because of the displacement incident happening, Saros may have been there. Who knows? Maybe Saros ended up dead anyways. That could be. But with all these things kind of played out, Orsted still knows that, well, I've seen it 200 times, and there's always variables. There's always things that tip things around. It might not always play out the same way, but it always stops here. Now, I do respect Orsted in this mindset and the idea that because I've seen it 200 times, even with Rudius being added, there's no point in expecting this time suddenly the man god's going to get stuck on this, because the man god's still resetting too. And he always stops right here. Nothing has changed for the man god besides, again, Rudius technically interacting with him, which again should be a big and I'm going against it again, which should be a massive warning sign, the idea that you're working alongside an anomaly that has appeared suddenly in this one that has worked for the man god. That's all question marks there. But still, it is very, very curious that he doesn't have a massive fear because Rudius is now present in the picture to the situation. But again, why bother worrying about that when I can focus on the next target? And if, yes, this is the one time the man god does continue to take action against Ariel, next time. Next time. That's going to be Ors's mindset. Well, he finally did something that he normally doesn't do. Next time. That's also Ors's mindset.
In other words, there is no cause for concern. Ariel will rule.
Okay, I understand now. Reese was willing to take Ors's word on that, although something did make him feel slightly anxious. The fact that he had failed in his mission so many times in a row. Good point. Good point.
I got it figured out. Nothing's gonna happen to Ariel now.
But you've lost hundreds of times. You literally have lost hundreds of times. And this might be one of them. So Orsted, can you really defeat the man god?
I can. I've already established what I need to kill him, and I know what preparations will be necessary. And this time, I have you at my side as well. We're very close now.
This stood out a lot for me. This exchange right here stood out so much for me. Orsted, again, thinking about the fact that he's lost so many times, can you really beat him? You've obviously failed a lot of times, or at least ran out of time. I mean, 200 years to do this whole thing is asking a lot. And again, if it comes into the picture of the idea of waiting for the factors that he needs, which again, seemingly is these things created by these dragonfolk, yeah, it could be possible that he doesn't have the time or the time frame to do it. Or it's just naturally that he is set in this position, in this place, because of that. That could be very well why he was put in this time frame. So my mindset here, let's just get into what I'm going to get into. My mindset here, my conclusions in the timeline here is the idea of, okay, yes, this stuff happens way back here with the dragonfolk. The dragon god himself, the first one, ends up dead. Through the actions of the man god, he ends up dead. But he created this reincarnation technique. All the dragonfolk reincarnated themselves, sent themselves forward. Even Petagoose is going along with them. He's young, so he doesn't remember anything, but they all send themselves forward. But additionally, they created, his son is Orsted. Orsted was sent to this time period. 330? This time period. For 200 years, he's going to live and reset. He's got this curse, this spell, this ritual that is placed upon him that he will live for 200 years. And if he dies before then, or if it reaches that 200 years, boop, back here, but he retains his memories. So it's like a time traveling / reincarnation. They've studied both these arts. The dragonfolk have studied the art of time travel and of actually reincarnation. So both of these things have been infused in one into him himself. And it resets him, resets him, resets him, resets him. Now let's throw in this variable that is Rudius and Nanahoshi. Now going into Nanahoshi's theory, adding that onto this whole picture, is this idea that I am pretty well kind of locking into. This idea that sometime in the future, somebody summons Nanahoshi, possibly Rudius as well, and sends them into this bracket. This world has been around for thousands of years. And this little gap of 200 years, this is where this dragon god is that's traveling around it trying to figure out a way of killing the man god. And then somehow, for some reason, Nanahoshi and Rudius were both sent right in this bracket. That seems like that seems oddly convenient. Which goes into my theory. I was always thinking it was possibly Nanahoshi is helping Orsted, and at some point way in the future comes back and wants to help him with the tools that he needs and summons them back into there. But now, with Orsted having seemingly never met Nanahoshi before, and let's see, later on he goes, yeah, I have met Nanahoshi. She was here somehow the other way. Maybe not by the displacement, maybe she's been here before in one of the timelines, and then she's sending back help to help him out. Now with this variable in mind, the idea that he has reset this many times, has never met Nanahoshi never met Rudeus, has never had a displacement incident. That displacement incident has to be created, and I'm going to say it again, and I keep saying it, by the man god. And what created that displacement incident? A summoning. Or time travel. Actually, she was putting more as a time travel, sent back time travel. So my idea here, my theory here, is the idea that in this specific timeline, the one that Rudeus is in right now, this is however many times that Orsted has reset back to this time point, started coming ahead, and possibly, and again, was going to defeat the man god, and now the man god sends back somebody to this point to stop him from doing that. So a future man god in this timeline is essentially trying to stop his own death by sending Nanahoshi, Rudeus, / whatever, back to here to stop him. Now, it could also be the idea that the man god sent Rudeus to be a variable to stop Orsted, and Nanahoshi was sent back in order to stop Rudeus, or at least help Orsted with the tools he needs to either stop Rudeus or stop the man god in this new wave. It's it's too much. It's too much. That's where my theories are going right now, is that I'm kind of expecting a possibility of someone being involved that is trying to stop Orsted, because this time Orsted was going to do it. And I think either Rudeus or Nanahoshi is somehow involved in that in some way. I do really like Nanahoshi's theory. It does technically fit with everything. That they were not just summoned to this world, but sent back in time at the same time, implying that they weren't summoned to this time period. They were specifically sent to this time period. And it might be in order to stop him, or to give Orsted the tools he needs. Now that's the curious question mark. Yes, it could still be the idea that in this timeline, this specific timeline, Orsted fails. And then going on to the future, at some point, Nanahoshi goes, crap, we needed Orsted to be successful, because now the man god's going to destroy everything. And that's the point where she summons, or sends herself back, time travels back, and maybe she pulled in Rudeus with it. Or she sent Rudeus back there, because they needed somebody from outside of this world, and maybe she was like, okay, the only real location I have is that moment. And it could have been that she was looking to pull in her boyfriend. And again, she sent herself back, and then she just doesn't remember. So many possibilities here. It's just, time sucks. Time travel sucks. It just messes with things. Like, there's so many possibilities that can kind of play out, and it's just really hard to ground yourself. Time travel in a lot of cases does sort of leave it up to... It makes it difficult to kind of guess, and it leaves it really up to the writer to reveal things as it comes along, because it's all time-based. It will be revealed when the time comes, or the characters decide to spill it. So we'll see where it goes. But yeah, it does kind of lay into my theories of the man god being involved with the displacement incident, and does technically open a door to another theory that I have, the possibility of either Rudeus or even possibly Nanahoshi's boyfriend, not really boyfriend, love interest, being the man god. Because if Nanahoshi is... never dies, or not never dies. If Nanahoshi never ages, there's a possibility that this other guy that was brought over as well never ages, and maybe he became the man god that wants it all to stop. Anyways, that's enough. That's enough around that. But I do like the fact that it seemed to indicate here that Orsted has so much confidence now, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that, yes, seemingly he has established what he needs to put together. Like, okay, I finally figured it out. These are the things I need to figure out. Or these are the things I need in order to get to the man god. So I can get him this time. Plus, additionally, he's like, I have you at my side as well. Now that I have you, he finally has an ally at his side. He can literally do it now. Which does make me believe that the previous reset, he probably figured out how to get to the man god. He just didn't have... he didn't have the time, or he didn't have the tool that he needed to finish him off. And I think what he's thinking now is like, okay, now I have everything I need to put together. Plus now, with you at my side, I can focus on other things, or additionally, your children can fight at my side now. I have everything plus an ally. It's very interesting. Which again plays in my theory, the idea that in this timeline, in the future, he's going to succeed, and the man god's sending something back to stop him. Rudius would just have to believe that. It didn't make much difference if Orsted was seeing the future or if he was caught in a loop. He had to trust Orsted's judgment either way. He'd do his part, as it was the only way to keep his family safe. There's the other thing that kind of is alluding to with this whole thing that kind of concerns me, is the idea that I'm kind of assuming at some point Orsted's going to die. And I think with Orsted dying, Rudius is going to have to fight the man god himself. And I think that's going to build into him having to take on the man god. And additionally, I think the trigger for Rudius to have to fight him is going to be the idea that, one, if the loop itself doesn't reset this current world, like if Orsted dies, he gets reset back 200 years, but it's in another timeline, and Rudius and them are continuing on. Or if it is one of those cases of like a ReZero situation, like the moment that Orsted dies, everybody resets and just doesn't remember anything. It would probably have to be a thing where either Orsted dying does not reset the world, it just resets him, or the man god figures out a way of killing Orsted without his power. Like, he's going to figure out how to get rid of the curse and then kill him. And then Rudius is going to have to be forced to have to take him down. And I think this stuff is really kind of flagging that. There's a lot of conversation and whispers in here that's kind of flagging that. I hope it's not Rudius that reveals it. That would suck. But additionally, yes, I feel like all this conversation right here is just flagging Ariel's death. I'm just... Mark my words. Like I said before, I think the variable that Orsted doesn't realize is that Rudius is there. The Toan displacement incident was there. Nanahoshi's there. And I think somehow this is going to be the one time the man god keeps pushing. Because what did I say before? What did I say before? Turning points have been seemingly established at this point as being the man god's turning points, not Rudius' turning points. And what did I say before? I think it was during the time that when they had the reveal about the turning points. What I said at that point is, I think the confirmation that for me is going to be, and again, I was kind of thinking it was going to be in here. I don't know. I think I still have, I have one more chapter title to see myself. I haven't seen chapter, I think it was 14. Or was it 15? I don't know if there's 15. It could be in the next volume. We'll know when that next turning point pops up in a chapter title. And I was expecting it to actually be here during the fight for Asra. I was expecting it not to be, Ariel's battlefield. I was expecting it to be turning point. Because all indications are pointing that this is the turning point that the man god's been building to. All the players that he put together, Rada, Darius, Luke, what do these three things have in common? They're all involved in this conflict for Asra. So I assume this was the man god's next turning point, was taking Asra. We haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen that next turning point. So either I'm wrong and it's not the man god's turning points, that they're Rudius' turning points, or we're not quite to that destination yet for the man god. He has something planned after this conflict that might still take the throne. Ariel's death? Send somebody else to go in there and kill her? When Orsted and Rudius are now leaving and Orsted's going, we got it. Everything's good. We won. Let's go. They walk out the door. Bam. Somebody else is sent in there to kill Ariel. Everybody that's currently there, which has been pretty much reduced at this point. Who's left behind? One of the servants for Petagus. The water god style, but do they really want to protect him? Are they going to protect Ariel? Is Isolde going to rush out there and protect Ariel? Doubt it. Who else? Yeah, we don't have really any big names that are going to be staying behind. Yeah, I think she's kind of left vulnerable. And that's what the man god's waiting for. Because Orsted thinks, yeah, he's not going to try anything else. This is where he always stops. Which makes me believe that the man god knows already that the dragon god, or that Orsted is resetting. I think he might already know. Well, he's gonna give up at some point. And there's a possibility that he sees this planned out future and that Orsted is gonna give up and then jump on it. Oh, he's gonna leave? Kill Ariel. And I think that's what's gonna be like. Again, either My prediction right now, one of my predictions right now around Ariel specifically, is that the last chapter of this volume will be turning point. We found out that Ariel was killed. This be turning point blah, and then it's just Ariel is dead, and then that's the volume. Or maybe in the next volume they'll have turning point, and we'll find out Ariel was killed. Again, because I believe that Ariel not ascending the throne is the turning point for the Man God right now, and if that's the case, the next turning point is going to be Ariel's death. But we'll see. We'll see. Following this, Princess Ariel gave Rudius a mansion to serve as his residence when they were in Asra. It was twice the size of their home in Renoa, staffed with servants that would care for it in their absence. Then, on the third day, Isolde came by to visit Eddis. Rudius was still very wary of her, just in case she was there for vengeance. She seemed to notice the tension on his face, but still behaved quite politely. Yeah. After introducing herself to the servants, Isolde followed Eddis into the living room. Their maids brought some tea, and while their hospitality was pretty modest, you'd never know it from how confidently Eddis handled things. The girl was a natural at ordering people around, which made sense as she had grown up in a mansion. Living in Rudius's house was probably a little awkward for her. They did have Aisha, but she really wasn't a servant. Yeah, I really love this little segment because it like shows that difference in how Eddis handles these servants and commands things versus, yes, how he handles Aisha and Lilia. Again, it was very clearly stated back there that Eddis didn't want to make demands of Lilia and Aisha. Didn't want to see them as servants and maids. Because in Eddis's eyes, Lilia is Rudius's mother. Aisha is Rudius's sister. She's not going to disrespect them. Zenith and Lilia are equally Rudius's mother. Whereas here, she goes right back into old Eddis. Right back to Saros' mansion. There's all these maids. That's what they're here for. They're doing their job. Command them to do that. That's what they do. That's their role. And this is what she's supposed to do. She's not going to dance around them and go, oh, thank you, or please, can you give us this? No, that's their job. Give me this. Go do this. Get this handled. Where's the tea? Put it here. It's kind of, again, yes, it shows like her old self, but I think the more precious thing here is shows, again, she doesn't treat Aisha and Lilia like that. They're family. Isolde received their welcome graciously, but seemed doubtful about Rudius's presence here. After a while, she bowed to him cautiously. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. My name is Isolde Cluel. Eddis and I trained together at the Sword Sanctum. Nice to meet you. I'm Rudius Grey Rat, Eddis' husband. Isolde grimaced. She's like, damn it, that was right. Damn it. Ah, so was you. She seemed to hate his guts, but he'd expected that, given the way that she talked about him before. Yes, I'm Rudius. The man who neglected Eddis for years on end, and took 2 other wives in the meantime? Right. Her stare was familiar. It was like talking to Cliff. I'd rather assume that you were that frivolous knight Luke, you know. Well, I don't think I ever lied to you about my identity, did I? No, I simply jumped to conclusions. She paused before giving a slight smile. In any case, it seems you take better care of Eddis than I thought. What makes you say that? This is a puzzling turn of the conversation. He wasn't sure how much he took care of Eddis. Eddis definitely took care of him, but Rudius didn't remember saying anything about their relationship either way. The Water King Isolde is here to visit. She was a student of the Water God Reda, and saw her master killed before her eyes. What if she was an enemy of the princess? What if she came here for revenge? Eddis might draw her sword. I have to protect her. That's what you're thinking, isn't it? It's written all over your face. Rudius didn't know you can fit that many words on his face. He felt like people have been reading his thoughts way too often lately. Maybe he really needed some time practicing smiles. Whatever, it wasn't the end of the world. And that makes you think I'm treating Eddis well? If you didn't care about her, you wouldn't be so protective. She's just wife number 3 after all. Did she have to call her number 3 in front of her? It wasn't like he ranked his wives or anything. In all honesty, I assumed that you'd be neglecting Eddis, perhaps demanding that she fight your battles and sleep with you, but otherwise, not even speaking to her. That sounded more like slavery than marriage. Eddis wasn't really talkative in general, though. It was rare for her to start a conversation, and sometimes just burst into his room and ravish him. Was he just her plaything or what? Nah, that wasn't fair. She was always willing to do stuff, like train with him. I like how he's like contemplating this whole conversation, and he's like, wait, am I just her plaything? He's like, no, it wasn't. Am I just a plaything? No, she does help me. It's a bit of a relief. She looks quite happy with you. Well, I'm glad to hear you think so. That earned him a smile from Isolde. It was a beautiful thing to witness, honestly. She looked like a prim and proper type, but there was a hint of the alluring about her. Men would be falling over themselves around her once she had really blossomed. But he had a feeling that that wouldn't happen until she got married. He could see her as a sexy wife next door for sure. Eddis stomped on Rudius' foot. So why are you here anyways? Rudius is mine. You can't have him. That was odd. Usually hearing him complimented put Eddis in a good mood. But today, she seemed to be stuck in her bossy brat mode. I think it's different for her. Like, not you. You can't, and again, that makes sense. If Edis sees Isolde as a rival, she wouldn't want her to be sort of flirtatious with him, because in her capturing Rudius, it would be like her defeat. I wonder if that's what they're going with. Believe me, I'm not interested in the slightest. That was understandable, but she didn't have to sound so disgusted. That hurt a little bit. You want to duel then? Isolde smiled awkwardly. No, Master Rada wanted me to carry on the Water God style, and Princess Ariel had already agreed to support us. I'm not your enemy. Just as planned, Isolde was going to complete her stint as a novice, then receive an appointment of some kind once she became a full-fledged knight. She'd probably end up as a palace sword instructor, or a captain of the Royal Knights. There was even a chance that she might be granted a noble title at some point. Master Rada could be rather picky, but it seems that she has a number of friends and sympathizers in the royal court. I suppose the princess didn't wish to make an enemy of all the practitioner of her style. Yeah, that makes sense. Swordsmasters of this world tended to be monstrously strong. Political clout still counted for more than combat prowess, but it would be silly to antagonize a group of deadly fighters when you get them on your side instead. And of course, we're all quite relieved to know that our training halls won't be shut down entirely. Rada's attack was an insane, unprovoked attempt to murder a princess of Asra. Even in a place like the royal court, where intrigue was constant and murder was common, a public assassination attempt was going to lead to an investigation. You could get away with anything as long as it happened in the shadows. If you got caught, there was going to be trouble. Well, unless you were a seriously powerful figure like Gravel, Ariel, or Darius. In this situation, Ariel didn't want to spark conflict with the practitioner of the Water God style, and they weren't interested in fighting a losing battle either. Since their interests coincided, no one would be held accountable for Rada's crimes. Everyone had agreed to put it behind them. That was probably difficult for Isolde on some level. Yeah, it's like that aspect of everybody kind of just moving on, and she's kind of stuck there going, no, this happened. It's a pity that Master Rada lost her life, but at least she died a Swordsmaster death. That's no small accomplishment in these peaceful times. I only wish that she had told me her intentions beforehand. She seemed sincere, and Rhys got a sense that she wasn't so devastated about Rada's death. It was an attitude that reminded him of the adventurers he used to travel with. Yeah, there is that expectation of something like this happening. Eventually this comes. But again, in her eyes, in a Swordsmaster's eyes, yes, a Swordsmaster's death is huge. She got to go out fighting Orsted, the dragon god. And I think there was an aspect of her being upset that the last time Orsted didn't kill her. I could have died to him before, but he let me live. This time, yes, I get to go out. I get to go out blazing. So you're over it? Edis asked bluntly. I won't deny that I'd like to avenge my master's death, but it wasn't you, Ghislaine, or Rudius who killed her, so I don't suppose I'll ever have my chance. She sounded bitter. Maybe a part of her regretted not chasing after Orsted. That's an interesting thing. It wasn't you, it wasn't Ghislaine, it wasn't Rudius, so I don't suppose I'll ever have my chance. Like the idea that if it was one of you guys, then yeah, I would be able to get my revenge, but it wasn't. It was this dude that's gone, and how the hell am I going to find him? And I would never be able to kill him. Rada got one shot by him. There ain't no way in hell I can't beat her, so I can't beat him. I don't mind dueling if you want. Please, Edis. Don't even joke about that. I have my obligation to protect the training halls of my style. The last thing I need to do is to suffer some lifelong injury fighting a crazy hellcat like you. Who cares about a bunch of musty training halls anyways? I suppose it seems odd to a girl who fled her house and her responsibilities, but for some of us, our obligations are very real. Oof. Damn. Punch. Edis fell silent, looking sullen and a little sad. It's only been a year since last time we saw each other anyways. Isolde's eyes flashed playfully. Wouldn't it be more fun to wait until we got a little bit stronger? Oh, yeah, you're right. Edis's face lit up in excitement. She seemed to think that her friend was being completely serious. Isolde, on the other hand, was regarding her with a patronizing smile of someone who tossed a dog a bone. That woman clearly had some experience handling Edis. Yeah, again, that is kind of a jab in the idea of, okay, these are my responsibilities. I need to worry about these responsibilities. And I think those responsibilities really did kind of lift up onto her shoulders once Rada was passed. And I think she is taking responsibility. And I think this is kind of one of those things that sort of helped Isolde move on, which it's interesting that they didn't actually get into it. I mean, it would just be Rudius really making speculations, unless they did an Isolde perspective, which would be cool. But yeah, I think there is this idea that for somebody like Isolde, in her situation, it helps. The idea that she's seen something very tragic, seen Rada die right in front of her, you know, held her dead body in her hands, wasn't able to get revenge for her. This guy is extremely powerful, just jumped off and just disappeared. Don't even know where he's at. All that kind of stuff. The fear that she probably felt in his presence, all that kind of stuff. And then here, she is essentially being pushed forward. I don't have time to mourn. I have these responsibilities on my plate now. I need to focus on this. She told me it's all mine now. She's passing it on to me. I need to her dying wish. I need to make sure it happens. And so those kind of responsibilities are good in the idea that it pushes you forward to get away, to be able to not dwell in that moment of mourning. At the same time, it is kind of sucky because you never really do mourn like you should. But at least it does help her move forward. It helps her sharpen up. And they've already given the indication that Isolde is a very mature girl. She seems very responsible about what she's doing. She's focused. She's determined about what she's doing. She's going, even before all this stuff happens, she's going off to be, join the ranks and everything like that. She's moving on with her career, her life, and focused on becoming a knight and everything. So she's mature. But this is definitely another thing that kind of pushes her. I can't sit still. I got to keep moving forward. But yeah, on the opposite end, it is kind of a jab in the idea of, oh, you wouldn't understand Edis because you left your family. You left all your responsibilities with Fatoe. You just went off on your own. I kind of thought that when I first read this, I thought she was talking about leaving, the Sword Sanctum. But no, I think the way that's worded, it's you fled your house, not the Sword Sanctum, your house. The only real reason I stopped by today was to see you, Edis. Since you've come all this way, why don't I show you around the city? That sounds good. I was getting a little bored sitting around here anyways. Let's go. You're certainly welcome to come along as well, Rudius. He considered it for a moment. There was a chance they would get into a fight. For all he knew, Isolde was lying to them. What if she led Edis into a mob of Water God-style students or something? It felt safer to tag along, so we did. I thought he was going to go, but I'll let him go. No, he did go. They spent the rest of the day seeing the sights with Isolde, his concern proven unfounded. She never led them to ambushes and seemed to enjoy her time with Edis. Rudius guessed that she waited until she came to terms with her master's death before visiting them. Yeah, I can see that as well. She kind of, okay, I'm good now. Let me go see Edis. On the 5th day, Sylphie and Rudius received an invitation for dinner at the Boreas family. Edis wasn't invited. He headed over, half expecting them to poison them, but it turned out they wanted to use Rudius as their intermediary to establish a friendlier relationship with Ariel. Yeah, suddenly now he's cool with Rudius. Rudius never met James, but after James mentioned Rudius' name to Alphonse, Alphonse shared a few stories about Rudius from the good old days. He also mentioned that Rudius was Paul's son, and technically part of the Nodos family tree. This prompted James to make an invitation. Cozying up with Rudius might create friction between the Boreas family and Luke, Ariel's trusted retainer. But Rudius got a sense that they wanted him to undermine the House Nodos. Very interesting. If he demanded a noble title as a Nodos Grey Rat, it would inevitably cause a conflict between himself and Luke. Even if he didn't come out on top, the struggle would create opportunities that the Boreas would like to use to their advantage. You'd think that they would invite Edis to remind Rudius of his ties to their family, but they may be wary of her. If he could make life miserable for the Notos, Edis could do the same for the Boreas. Basically, they wanted to forget that she existed. Rudius could understand that logic, but this cautious, underhanded strategy felt like proof that the Boreas family he had known and loved was gone for good. He spent the dinner nodding vaguely and didn't promise anything. What a nasty segment. Oh, what a nasty segment. Again, Rudius doesn't care about this family. He just does not care about the Grey Rats in general. He cares about his immediate family. He cares about Edis. The rest of them that's still alive can take a hike. He doesn't care about any of them. And it's sad right here. It's okay, first of all, it's interesting. And it makes sense that in lieu, and after all this crap that happened, Ariel coming in, decimating the competition, people getting donutted, people getting cut in half, people getting severed, blown up, all this stuff, all this stuff happened, and they're still trying to gain power. They're trying to slime all around the situation, trying to gain favor in there, trying to manipulate Rudius, trying to manipulate people to get power. They still want that power. They can't not have it. And I would agree with them in the idea that this is probably the perfect time to do it. Don't let the dust settle, because the cards are still settling. And it's best to kind of, Paimon was doing that. Now, Paimon was mostly the idea that I'm going to die next if I don't get in there and say something. But there's still this idea that now when the fire is still hot, get in there. And they're doing that right there. And they're obviously going, well, Rudius is technically a perfect candidate. Let's bring him on in. But it is sad, in the midst of that as well, is what the comment is here about Edis. They don't even want to acknowledge her. She's this wild dog. Why would we want to bother with her? She's technically given up the name. I don't know if that word got to them, but she's technically given up the name. They don't want to acknowledge that she exists, even though she's the perfect one to control if they wanted to get to Rudius. But there's a side of me that acknowledges they probably know they can't control her. Like, why would they even try? There's no way in hell we can control her, but that Rudius guy, maybe him. Maybe him. On the 8th day, Rudius took some time to check out how everyone was doing. Triss officially returned to her former life as a noblewoman. She seemed to have assumed a role as one of Ariel's attendants, like Elmoy and Cleone. But Ariel was quietly arranging for her to get back in contact with the former bandit gang, who might prove useful down the line. Clever girl. No, when it first said that, I was like, well, I don't think she'll want to go back to them. Oh, no, she wants to use them to contact them to use them. Okay, I got you. All right, yeah. We'll see. We'll see what that goes in the future. Ariel and Luke were hard at work, and probably would be for some time. Darius' death had caused a certain amount of chaos in the court, but they brought things under control. Preparations for Ariel's ascension to the throne were coming along steadily. Pedagus had already returned to this floating fortress, leaving one of his servants behind as a representative. After Rudius sent his condolences for the two that he had lost, he explained they could be revived back at his castle. It sounded like a handy feature. That was my assumption, that he could just summon it back. Because again, these servants are essentially just a creation. So it technically makes sense there. Unless he's summoning them and not necessarily creating them, I think it's implied that he's created them. As Ors had said, everything was moving along smoothly. It seemed like there was nothing for Rudius to worry about, and his job was done. On the 9th day, Rudius found himself at Ariel's bedchambers in the Silver Palace. The previous day, he had mentioned his desire to return home, and she summoned him there. He found himself on her bed, disclosed and waiting for her to come inside. As she entered the chambers, she was wearing a see-through nightgown. Sylphie was watching from outside the window, anger on her face. Holding her rod in her hand, she was ready to fire through the window. Anyways. But no, he didn't want anyone suspecting him cheating, so he brought Sylphie along. The princess didn't ask him to come alone or anything. The place was luxurious, comprised of the fanciest stuff you'd find in the world. Normally the room would be swarming with maids, but Ariel had dismissed them for their meeting. She poured for them what seemed like pricey wine. I see you brought Sylphie as well. Yes, I wouldn't want to be alone with a pretty woman like yourself at this hour. You know, people might talk. Goodness, yes, I suppose there's no telling what would happen, is there? Ariel smiled. Sylphie didn't look amused. Rudius wondered if she knew that he was joking. Rudy really might have gotten you in bed, you know. Sylphie seemed to think that he was a beast who would cheat on her at any opportunity. It was sad, but he had only himself to blame. Even if Sylphie didn't trust him, he trusted her, especially now that she told everyone that she'd choose him over Ariel. Now then, allow me to express my sincerest gratitude again, Rudius. It's thanks to you that we've made it to this point. I don't think I agree, Your Highness. This was your victory, and you made it happen yourself. Ariel had spent many years gathering allies in Renoa, and it paid off. She had many loyal and talented people at her disposal, stepping in to fill the vacuum left by Darius' death, and to replace the nobles of Gravel's faction. If things kept moving along as planned, the princess would have taken control of the kingdom before too long. Yeah, he sort of retorts it here in a minute, but yeah, I don't think that's necessarily true with all the variables in place, especially with the man god involved. And whether the matter of Lord Pedagus, or your guidance on our journey, or the introduction you arranged for me, it was you who made it possible, Rudius. I would have fallen short without your assistance. Well, it's nice of you to say so. I owe you a great deal. Perhaps Sylphie's right. You might have got me into bed tonight if you tried. As Ariel batted her eyes flirtatiously, his gaze wandered down the nape of her neck, before Sylphie glared at him so hard that he stopped himself. By the time his eyes returned to Ariel's face, she had gone back to her usual smile. She's so clever. I'm only joking, but in all seriousness, I truly would like to reward you somehow. Reward me? I don't think that's necessary. This whole thing was a work assignment for him, and she had already given him an entire mansion for a vacation home. Come now, is there anything that I can do for you? Given my promise to Luke, I can't offer you territory or a noble title, but you can have anything else I'm capable of giving you. That didn't narrow it down much. It felt like there was a lot of things that he wanted, but it was hard to pin down a single request. There was plenty you could find in the kingdom of Asura. Maybe she can get him a rare grimoire or something. Wait, there was one thing that he could ask for. This is one of those moments where it's like, oh yeah, that's still a thing, right? I forgot that's still a thing. Well, I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but at some point, I intend to sell a figurine that comes with the book. It's a figurine of a demon, so it would help to get official permission from the royal family. Ah, yes, I remember you discussing that with Lord Pedagus. Right, I'm guessing it might be a little difficult though. The Milish church was very prominent in Asura. If they saw the royal family publicly encouraging the sale of demon figures, it might lead to some political friction. And yeah, I thought immediately when I heard this, in a good way for him to improve his relationship with Isolde. Not only were you the one that caused my master to be killed, but now you support this guy making demon figurines? because Isolde's like massively like into church and stuff. So yeah, that's not going to help with that whole thing. Not at all. I'll see that you have your authorization and provide you with workshops that can manufacture your product. You don't think the Mills Church will object? It won't be an issue. Problems of this sort can be solved with money. Power of bribery. That made sense though. Again, this goes back to what they were talking about before, this idea of like the Mills Church isn't okay with, you know, harems, having multiple women, but these royal figures have them all. Like there's anything, it's rules for thee and not for them. It's really the phrase there. Rules for thee, not for them, because money. Okay then, I guess I'll get in touch once we're ready. Very well, I'll be ready and waiting. So they had a sponsor and a manufacturing plan. Now it came down to how quickly Julie could perfect her skills. He seemed to remember reading in his feature diary that the figurines sold really well when they were packaged with a picture book specifically. That sounded like a smart approach. There were a lot of illiterate people out there, but they could at least look at pictures. They'd have to find an artist if they really wanted to break it in. Of course, I owe this victory to you as well, Sylphie. Congratulations, Ariel. I'm so happy for you. Sylphie had formally quit her job as Ariel's bodyguard the day before. She'd been busy arranging for her replacement until the day before. But once it was done, she spent an entire day with her head in the clouds. You're sure you don't need my help anymore, right? That's right, I'll be just fine. Thank you so much for all those years that you spent protecting me. Ariel bowed her head deeply as she spoke. It wasn't something you saw every day. Princess Ariel, you don't have to bow to me. I don't want to pretend that I can repay you with gifts and money, but I want you to understand how truly, deeply grateful I am. You've helped me in more ways than I could ever count. Come on, it's not a big deal. I was just helping out my friend. Sylphie took Ariel's hands and squeezed them gently. They had been friends for an entire decade now. You could tell how much they care for each other. Please, come back and see me, Sylphie. You're welcome anytime. I will. I promise. And if you happen to be in Renoa, well, I guess you wouldn't have time to stop by our house or anything. True. But I can always arrange for a party at the castle. You'll all be invited, naturally. I guess we're big, important people now, huh? Sylphie and Ariel talked cheerfully for a while. As Ruiz listened quietly, he found himself remembering the day that he first met Sylphie. He could see her trudging along in a field by herself, too scared to complain when bullies tossed mud at her. But here she was, chatting happily with the princess, and more importantly, a friend. The thought made him feel warm and fuzzy. He does this a lot. Isn't this like the third time he's done this? It's like, it feels like every volume there's a moment where he goes, I remember a time when she was out there and she was being bullied, and now she's with these friends and everything. Finally, the 10th day came. It was time for them to leave Astra behind. And that is chapter 12. My gosh, I didn't actually think I'd talk this much about these two chapters, but I ended up doing that. Very, very juicy bits, and I really, really, really enjoyed going through them. But yeah, we'll cut it off there. I have read a bit into chapter 13, but I think there's only 14 chapters in the volume, so I guess that'll actually work out well to do 13 and 14. I think it's about the same page count. I don't know how much it'll break down, but that'll probably work out to be a good conclusion of the volume itself for Mushoku Mondays. But yeah, great set of chapters. Thank you guys so much for dropping by for the premiere. Again, hey chat, hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday. Thank you guys so much for dropping by and all of your support. It means a great deal to me. And yeah, as usual, I keep forgetting. Stop, Andrew. Pause, Andrew. Thank you so much once again to Adrian and Earthly for being mods of the channel itself. Guys, take a moment to give them your thanks. They are the ones that technically make the premiere itself happen. As I said before, without them moderating the chat and protecting me as I watch the premiere with all you guys, it just wouldn't be it could be a premiere, I just wouldn't be there. I wouldn't be in the chat. There's some times where they're not available and I'm like, oh, that's fine, I'll just type but not read. But they keep things safe. They keep me spoiler free. That way I can do speculations like this and have a lot of fun. If you guys get your messages deleted, just know that they're doing that in order to protect me. They're being extra safe. I gave them that right. If you're mad about it, come to me. But I really appreciate them being around and taking literally hours of their time every single week to be here for that. Really appreciate it. But yeah, as per usual, greatly, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel monetarily, Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, all that stuff. It means so much to me. Thank you guys so much for your support. It's because of you guys that this happens. I'm able to keep the lights on and keep it going. That light right there and that light right there and all the rest of the lights, it's because of you guys. But yeah, until the next Mushoku Mondays, hopefully the last Mushoku Monday of 17, y'all take care. Incidentally, she accepted the
Ariel's victory has become certain. Ariel's victory had
the Novus Knight. The Novus Knight Isolde was weak, yes, but cold. Return. But what would that But what would that accomplish? Well,